Hello and welcome back to Up the Villa opposition preview time. Villa v Wolves. Delighted to be joined by Dave from Talking Wolves. How are you, mate?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, mate. I'm pretty good.
Good.
First question I'm sort of going to ask you then: how does it feel to be a Wolves fan at the minute?
It's all right. I think from the outside, it probably looks a little bit worse than what it is at the moment. But like, I'm not going to sit here and say things are absolutely perfect because that's definitely not the case. I think with every football club, there's different opinions in the fan base, and I am starting to see a few more negative opinions and a few more Wolves fans become worried on social media. But also, I think if you sit back and actually sort of take everything in, I think it's be very, very harsh to jump on the back of to jump on Gary O'Neill's back at the moment. So, yeah, it's okay, but I mean, it does need to improve sooner rather than later, mate. And I mean, including you boys, it's not a pretty fixture list for us coming up over the next few weeks either. So I don't think it's going to get much easier for him.
Yeah, I mean, so off the back of last season, it was a pretty good season. Lopetegui had sort of done Martin O'Neill on you, left you before the season started. So
Yeah.
we know how that feels. It's a bit of a disaster, really, because a manager needs a pre-season. So, we did so well to keep you up, basically, because a lot of people were looking at it thinking this is going to be an absolute disaster. So talk to me a little bit sort of like off field with like transfers, because obviously I look at Wolves from afar and I get a sense of like transfers, signings not quite being there. So what's been happening there?
Yeah, again, there was a lot of frustration and negativity throughout the summer. Lopetegui, one of the main reasons he left was because of the finances and the lack of backing, and Wolves sort of pulled it out of the hat at the end of the summer, just gone. Obviously, Gary O'Neill had joined in the last few days of the window. We were quite active, and the same thing happened this summer, just gone. I think Gary was really pushing for a new signing in January, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say if we signed a new striker last season, we would have broken into Europe. I don't think that would have been the case, but we were at one point, eighth and definitely knocking on the door, potentially getting into Europe. And our squad depth just, due to injuries and suspensions or whatever, it was a disaster. We lost out to Coventry in the FA Cup because we were playing two kids up front that barely had a senior Premier League start between them. And I do think if they got back, just even with a couple of million to get someone through the door on loan or whatever, Wolves would have been in a much better position. But we ended the season dreadfully. I don't think it was weird. It almost got to a point where, and I don't think players would have been reminded of it, but it almost got to a point where Wolves were mathematically safe and then the form just fell off a cliff. And I don't think that would happen where Gary O'Neill says, "Oh, lads, don't worry now, we're safe. You don't need to try anymore," because that would never happen. But that seemed to be around the area where the form fell off. And then this season as well, obviously we lost Kilman, who was a little bit of a surprise because I didn't think we'd lose him, to be fair. But I don't think I think I'm not going to say overrated because I think he's still a solid Premier League player, but I think he's rated a lot higher than his quality, to be completely honest. And then Neto, I think we all knew he was going to go, and you're never going to replace Neto like for like in terms of quality. That's just not going to happen. But what you can try and find is a winger who is still a good player but available a lot more. That was Pedro Neto's issue, availability. And again, a frustrating window, but they seem to claw it back at the end. We brought in some quality players towards the end of the window. Andre looks a very good talent. Probably missing a top centre half still, to be honest. Still not overly convinced with that area of the pitch, but the window is okay. The squad's okay. I think in terms of depth and quality in certain areas, it's probably amongst the best that we've had. But for some reason, it's just not clicking at the moment, and I'm not sure what it is. I just hope for Gary O'Neill's sake that there's not almost like a hangover from the end of last season where this sort of, and it can happen in football. You see it with promoted sides are winning games and they take that into the next season. At the moment, we're dropping points or losing games, and unfortunately, it looks like that's creeped into the new season. But you take a look at context. Our start to the season has been tough. We played Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle aren't easy. Forest away, you could argue should be beating them, but they've had a really solid start to the season as well. And even the end of last season, so I think we've only got one win in 15, one win in 16, which is an awful, awful record. But if you sit back and actually look at the teams that we faced in there, there's not actually that many games in there that you would have put money on Wolves to win comfortably.
Yeah, I watched the Arsenal game. I watched Chelsea. I watched Newcastle. You've not played that bad in all of them, have you? Really? So, what do you think is sort of like missing a little bit? Because when I've watched Wolves in the past, Ain't Nori last season was fantastic. He was, unbelievable for you. And in that four at the back at the minute, he's not quite as good, is he? So, do you think it's going to that four at the back that's probably weakened you somewhat, or what do you think?
Potentially, and I think the four at the back's a weird one because we knew, five at the back, it was unbelievable. He tried a four at the back in the COVID season, and the whole of that season was just a nightmare anyhow because we lost Jimenez and so on. It just didn't quite work for Nuno. There were certain games where it looked really good, and other games where it didn't look so good. And when Bruno Lage came in, he stuck with a five. Although it wasn't the best football in the world, still did a job, still finished pretty solidly. As soon as he changed before the following season, couldn't buy a win and got sacked. Lopetegui sort of stuck with a four, but again, it wasn't the best football in the world, and sort of he got us over the line. And so with Gary, five last year, worked okay, and then it's just like they're just trying to work with something. I think with a back four, you need to buy proper defenders, and we haven't invested in the centre halves in the summer. We've got a lad, Jason Mascara, who's come back from a couple of loan spells, who looks okay, but can be a bit erratic, as you would have probably seen in the Arsenal game with certain things that he's doing. But I don't know. But I think the fullbacks that we've got are attacking fullbacks. You like to get them down into the final third, and if you get caught out and caught on the break, which we're a team of Wolves size, you will do. It's frustrating, but I think you're right. I mean, even the Chelsea game is such a heavy defeat, but the first half we looked probably the better team, and we seemed to have momentum going into half time. We fell apart. The Arsenal game frustrated, but I think the two main things is lack of ruthlessness in front of goal. We are creating some half decent opportunities, just not taking those, and then just individual errors. I think the Arsenal game, both goals, probably goalkeeping should be better. The Chelsea game, Ain't Nori, we conceded 3 identical goals with him getting beaten down the left-hand side. Newcastle game, frustrating, 2 very good goals, to be fair. The first one deflected, but still just not taking out chances. And ultimately in the Premier League, that's going to cost you.
Yeah, you touched on a bit of your recruitment. You brought in Strand Larson. I think we were linked with him at some point.
Yeah,
and Andre caught my eye last week. He didn't give the ball away, did he? So talk to me about sort of like Andre, like where's he come from? Because normally you look through Wolves' team and it's like Portuguese, and now it's like Brazilian.
Yeah.
So yeah, you love a little like combo, don't you?
Yeah, I think Andre's an interesting one because we were linked with him much earlier in the window, and I think Fulham were heavily linked. Liverpool liked him last year as well. I don't think our central midfield department was okay. It was pretty strong, to be fair. And I think when we were linked with him, everyone was like, "Oh, is João Gomez going to move on? What's going to happen there?" I think we were playing Burnley in the cup. There was like breaking news. Yeah, Wolves have agreed a deal. Like half time of that game, everyone was like, "What's going on?" And then Gary O'Neill made quite a weird comment after that, basically saying, I personally think one of the reasons they've gone with Andre is that they couldn't get a good centre half in for value for money, basically. So they brought in a very, very good quality number 6 instead. So I think what they're hoping with Andre and potentially Lamina and João Gomez, if they're going to play them as a free, is that midfield free is going to help the defence a lot more, which we haven't really seen as of yet, but I'm hoping obviously it will happen. But Gary O'Neill made a comment about basically he's going to have to change his shape and change what he's worked on to accommodate certain players now. So I don't know if this is part of the reason why we're not, doing too brilliantly. But looks like a tidy play. Had a really good performance against Newcastle United, and should definitely start again on Saturday against the Villa.
Yeah, one player that's not featuring much is Hwang. What's happened to him? Because he's scored goals he has in the Premier League, and it's not easy, is it, to score?
No.
I think it was last year. Was it last year that he did quite good, or the year before? One of the two. And what's happened with him now? Then he's just like disappeared.
It was again. Hwang had he had a bit of a purple patch probably between the start of the season, about Christmas last year, and he just, when him, Neto, and Cunha were sort of on form, all three of them looked like unplayable. Then he got a couple of little injuries. I think he went to the Asia Cup in January, which really killed his momentum. Came back from there injured and struggled to get his form back. And then we rejected £25 million offer from Marseille for him in the summer as well. And with Hwang, it's not just him as a player. I think, and you've probably seen it at Villa with certain players, his market ability in terms of getting players over. You go to Molineux now, there's literally a section at Molineux dedicated for Korean fans to come and watch Hwang play. And that's why Wolves fans have almost, this sort of story in the back of people's minds is that he's almost on his contract, he has to play a certain amount of minutes to appease these South Korean fans. But his form has been atrocious. He's been really, really poor. I mean, we played and lost in the cup against Brighton, and I think it was about 30, 35 minutes gone, and he touched the ball. And I thought, I didn't even realise he was on the pitch. Like, he's been really, really poor. So there's certain players like that. Cunha, I love Cunha, probably one of my favourite Wolves players, just hasn't started off the season that brightly. Again, he came off the bench yesterday, didn't look great. Nori, who you mentioned earlier, had a great season last year, started off really slowly. So there are some encouraging signs. Like, even I thought at times we were awful against Brighton in the cup, but then there were signs where we played really good and really positive football. And it's just like something just needs to click, and when it clicks, we'll be okay. But at the moment, if things just keep happening, like we've got you boys, we've got Liverpool at Molineux next week, you're getting into October and you haven't got a win in the league. That's when, whether you're a Gary O'Neill fan or you think you should have enough time, it's not acceptable to be getting that far into the season without picking up 3 points.
Yeah, so where are you at then? I sense you're, a bit more like positive, and you give him time. But like, where are you at with him? Because he's been there like a year now. So where do you sort of hope to see Wolves in like a year's time? Do you think it will be with Gary O'Neill, or do you think you'll have to sort of switch it up a bit?
It's hard. I really don't know at the minute, to be honest, because I think, again, it's weird with this fan base. We go into the season, and a lot of people judge, and every football fans are saying you judge a team and their transfers, but really you shouldn't judge it until the deadline's done and finished. We were having fans a week before the deadline because they weren't happy with the business, saying, "Yeah, that's it, we're going down." A week later, they're saying, "Actually, it's a 7 out of 10 window, 8 out of 10 window. It was all right." So, I think there are certain elements of that in our fan base at the moment, saying, "Yeah, we're done. Why have we got PE teacher shouts and all that still coming out?" But I'm sort of in the middle at the moment. I think ultimately we saw it at Villa with terms of ticket prices. Wolves had the same. If you're paying that amount of money to go and watch your football team, ultimately you want to win football matches. And I look at the team on paper, and I think it's quite a stupid comment to make, but it is too good to be in and amongst that bottom three. There's some very talented football players, international football players. I don't think we're strong enough to be competing for European places, not at all, but we should certainly be, towards mid-table. And that's why I think we have got a tough start, but between November up to Christmas, it's all teams that I would back us to beat. And that's my thing at the moment. Gary O'Neill really has got to keep his head above water until November, I think, and then we'll crack on. But if he certainly gets to mid-November, end of November, and we're still struggling, I think there's got to be conversations to have. But Wolves will back him at the moment. He signed a new deal in the summer as well, which is always a risk when the manager starts off finishes the season so badly. But I think at the moment they'll give him a little bit of time. But a lot of fans are considering last season's results as well. One win in 15 or one win in 16, it obviously doesn't make good reading.
No, it doesn't, does it? And what you don't want is like pressure on them sort of games that you're saying, like after November,
course, yeah.
They're the ones that you've got to win then, haven't you? And
yeah, I mean, if you go into games, I don't know what the order of the games is, but if you go, I think we've got Leicester maybe to start November. If you go into games against teams like Leicester at home as well, and you're needing a win and start off badly, the negativity around is just going to stray away, and that doesn't help anyone. Everyone gets frustrated. So I mean, hopefully it's this Saturday against Villa. I'm not holding my breath. I don't think any Wolves fan is holding their breath, to be honest, mate. But if we can get a positive result, whether it's a point or even 3 points, that would certainly help. But we play Liverpool next week. We've got City in a couple of weeks. It's not an easy start for Wolves, to be fair.
Yeah, what are you making of Villa at the minute then?
I think it's good, mate. I mean, like I said earlier, I think from a fan point of view, and I'm sure you've done loads of content on it, I think the sort of the ticket prices and stuff is frustrating. But in terms of on the pitch and football, if you're winning football games, I think you can sort of look past that at times. And it will be interesting to see how you're getting on Saturday, because obviously midweek fixture, as did we, to be honest. But when you're winning quite comfortably in the Champions League, I'm sure you're going to go into the next game absolutely buzzing. So, unbelievable job that Emery's done. Interesting window for you guys. I think looking from the outside, certain bigger names left, but I think some of the other lads, even John Duran, you kept hold of him, and he started off the season brilliantly, especially for someone that probably on paper at the start of the season was second choice. I think he's certainly great competition for Ollie Watkins and seems to be putting the ball in the back of the net. It's good momentum for Villa. I think this, Saturday, about what was it? I didn't watch the full game, but you 2-0 down against Everton, you can come back and win that 3-2, and then you go into your next game winning, by a few goals in the Champions League. Momentum sky high for you boys at the moment. So I have no doubt that you've got the quality to be knocking on the door for a European place again for next season. So very jealous at the moment, mate. Very jealous. So I'm sure a lot of Wolves fans now are saying, look at Villa, and we should be doing that, but it's football. Things change quickly, don't they? So, no, jealous at the moment of how you boys are getting on.
So what can we expect on Saturday then from you guys? Because we've done a bit of what we think is going to happen. And we think there's a bit of a blueprint with Everton and how they sort of on transition hurt us. And pretty much your goal against Newcastle is one of the ways in which you could probably get some joy against us. So is that how you think it would be, sort of like transition? Or, we've had this chat before about the derby vibe, but do you think he might try and focus more on that and get that bit more like aggression to try and sort of like stay in the game a bit more?
Maybe. It will be interesting to see how he set up, because he'd been playing quite a high line predominantly, and I think that was a concern with some fans that our back four couldn't really cope with that. Against Arsenal, we were playing quite high. And to be fair, even at the Emirates, we had like a 20-minute spell where Arsenal couldn't get out their own half. And I think people very quickly forget that. I know you said, you saw the Arsenal game and, we played very well. But I think a lot of Wolves fans forget that we have had moments in every single one of these games where we've looked a very good team. It was weird. I always feel up for a game at Villa Park, and then the one last year, I think you could tell our season was done because you guys sort of beat us 2-0, didn't you? You didn't really have to get out of first gear. I felt like it was just a really easy game for you guys. Saturday will be interesting because for me it will show what the atmosphere and what the mood is like in the dressing room. I think it was an okay performance against Brighton, but still too many negatives for me, and they've got to iron out these stupid individual mistakes. Will they do it in a game against a local, let's say rival as such, if you want to put it like that? I'm not so sure, but it is a good chance, because if you get to at least a positive performance or a positive result, whether it's a draw or a win on Saturday, that'll relieve so much pressure off Gary O'Neill and the team. And I think, like I said earlier, that's the sort of result that will just help everything click and go together. We saw it last year. It was about this point last season. We lost to Ipswich in the Cup, and everyone was fuming. Everyone was like, this guy's not up to it. On the Saturday, we went and beat Man City, and then we went on a really, really strong run. Not saying it's going to happen, but this has the feeling of that could have that effect if we have a positive result at Villa Park on Saturday.
Yeah, I remember watching that game. You did really well against Spurs as well, didn't you? Was it that Sarabia that volleyed one in?
Spurs, we got the double over. That great goal. That was Sarabia. And then I think we played you boys. We had a run at Molineux where we were unbeaten. We beat Spurs, we beat Chelsea. We drew to you in Newcastle, I think. I had a really, really solid run. But the City win at home started that really. And this has almost got that feeling where we'd lost in the Cup. A lot of fans starting to get on his back, and then after that City game, it just clicked. But he did change to a back five in that game.
Did he?
And I would be interested. I don't think he will on Saturday, but I would be interested if he bottles it and changes shape and formation. But if he does, then I think it's got 2-1 Wolves win written all over it. But no, it'll be a tricky game for us. Tricky game.
Yeah, cool. Well, I did say he could possibly go to a fight. Is that Totti fit then? Is he ready
Yeah,
to
I think he
play
was
or
out
not?
for the cup game, but I think him and Aït-Nouri was hoping they're going to be fit for Saturday. But it's a bit annoying. They always do our press conferences quite late, so we won't know properly till tomorrow. But yeah, I think Totti might be fit. But I think if Totti's fit, he'll probably play him left back, Dawson and Mosquera centre back. And then if Aït-Nouri starts, he might play a bit further up. But we've got a lot of good attacking players on paper, but they're just not showing enough quality at the moment. So yeah, I am intrigued. I could not predict the lineup at the moment. It's chopping and changing too much, and I think that's part of the issue. I think he needs to find his 11 and settle down and get a bit of consistency. Go from there.
Cool. Right, it's been great chatting to you again anyway. So I'll put the channel in the description to the video. Villa fans, go and check Talking Wolves out. We are doing another collab over on there as well. So go and show that one some love as well. So cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on again.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon.